which I guess you could consider the first stepping stone to this story, but not really. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's me, Teresa, and welcome to the Bimbo Book Club, where I create content for adult content creators about self-help, business optimization, and wealth building. In today's video, I wanted to explain how I actually ended up on OnlyFans. I think that this is a very long and interesting journey, and I would like to welcome you along with me. So let's get started right away because, like I said, it is kind of a long story. First of all, I got started in sugaring. I had been dating this guy, and then a year and a half, maybe 2 years later, we were hooking up again, and he was telling me about the girl he had dated in the middle and how she was on seeking arrangements and she was a sugar baby and she had her whole entire lifestyle funded by these two sugar daddies that she had. Keep in mind, I lived in Iowa at the time, so the sugar daddies were not that sweet, if you know what I mean. But I was struggling, I was in college, and I got a sugar daddy off of seeking arrangements, and I would just go like have lunch with him, go grab drinks with him, and he would pay me $50 to $100 just to hang out. And that was my first experience in like sex work, even though I never actually had sex with him. A few months later though, I started talking with this guy who lived down in Texas. Mind you, at the time I lived in Iowa, and I saw all of these girls who were selling nudes on Twitter through Dropbox, and I figured, well, I'm talking to this guy in Texas and I send him several nudes per day, and these girls are getting paid for it, like I should be getting paid for it too. So how I got into Dropbox and selling content online was actually because I was talking to this guy, and I actually asked him before I started doing it. I said, hey, would you mind if I saved the content that I'm sending you and I just sold it? It's actually a funny story. Later on in the future, after we stopped talking and I found out that he had been having relationships with other girls after he had been telling me, you know, the only reason that I'm not making you my girlfriend is because you live so far away. Maybe once you move to Texas, we can pursue a relationship. You know how men are. He just kept switching his story, and he tried to throw it in my face. He was like, well, you were selling nudes. And I said, I asked you if I could sell nudes and you said you didn't care. But you know how men are. It wasn't really my problem at that point. So I was in this group chat with 3 other girls, and all of us were interested in selling nudes, but no one really knew how to go about it. So we decided to make a Dropbox where you could buy 4 girls' nudes for the price of 1, along with not really knowing how to send content. A couple of those girls didn't want people to know they were selling content. They didn't want to promote it as much as they needed to. So what I ended up doing was I did a lot of the promotions. I would post them. The other girls would like and retweet it. And if somebody asked me who they were, I was allowed to tell them who the other girls were. And it was pretty common knowledge. They just didn't want to be promoting on their page because of jobs, school, etc. So I did a lot of the promoting, and I also had a Google spreadsheet that listed everyone who bought our content, and then I had another page for all of us, and each week I would count how many pictures each girl sent me, and I would give them a percentage of the money that we had made based on how much content that they were sending me, which I thought was the most fair way to do it. And they all had access to this Excel spreadsheet. It was actually on Google Sheets, so I was able to just share it with them, and it showed how many photos they had sent me, how much money we had made for the week, and what percentage that was, so the total amount of money that they were going to get for the week. I would love it if you left a comment down below if you're interested in seeing how I do these spreadsheets. I might not be doing the same kind of spreadsheet as I was back when I was doing content with other people, but I still like to keep a Google Sheet with all of my external sales for tax purposes and also just so I can manage my income. So make sure you leave a comment down below and let me know if you would like to see how I do that. I don't know if you know this, but back before OnlyFans was super popular, back when it was just Dropbox, I believe that the prices were much higher and there were a lot fewer people that were doing it, you know? It's just the law of supply and demand and how that affects the value of the marketplace. That's like basic high school economics, right? So we were selling this Dropbox of 4 girls for $200. But then finally, things went to hell when we found out that one of the girls that was making content with us was sending out our link for free. So not only were people having access to just her content for free, they were getting content for free to all 4 of us. And we weren't seeing a dime of money. We didn't know who had the links, because that's what I would always do. I would always write down the person's name. I would write down how they paid. I would write down their email address that I had shared the link with, so that if any of our content ever got leaked, we would have at least an idea of who did it. But then we found out that this girl, to impress little Twitter boys, she would send them our whole Dropbox, which was all of us fully nude. It had like us masturbating, it had our sex tapes, it had literally everything, and it was just devastating that somebody that I felt as if I had done so much for would betray me just for male validation. I felt as if I had been robbed. And then the second girl to drop off was because her mom found out about it, and I don't know why she threw this little temper tantrum. Me and the girl that was still doing this Dropbox with us, we were staying at her house, and her mom asked her about it, and she told her mom that we did it too. I just didn't really understand why you needed to throw us under the bus, because we had had plans to stay with her for like 2 weeks. So just imagine if her mom had kicked us out of the house, and the other girl was from Georgia and I was from Iowa. Thank God we had other friends to visit, and her mom didn't actually kick us out, but I was a little concerned about that. I didn't understand why she needed to throw us under the bus like that, because her mom threatened to kick her out of her house if she kept doing it, and that is why she inevitably decided to quit, which is understandable. But I also was not a huge fan of her exposing us to her mom when it really didn't have anything to do with us. And if it did have anything to do with us, it was going to end up hurting us. And kind of the same thing, you know, I thought we were all close friends, and I felt as if I had been betrayed in some way. Maybe that's just me being a Pisces and I like to play the victim, but I just really didn't see like the point of that. Like, why do you need to tell your mom that when it could potentially derail all of the plans that we had? I understand not wanting to lie to your mom about your own situation, but if she's already upset with you, why bring us into it? It's not like she's gonna like it anymore for you to do it just because your friends are doing it. If anything, I know my parents would have been like, if everybody else were jumping off a bridge, would you do it too? But obviously in this situation, I was kind of the person that initiated jumping off the bridge. And so it was down just to me and our friend from Georgia who needed the extra income. But even when it was the 4 of us, she was always the one uploading the least amount of content, and she was my closest friend out of the 4 of us. So I would always try to like warn her, you know, if she hadn't sent me anything for the week or she wasn't gonna get paid that much, before I paid everyone, I would try to shoot her a text and be like, hey, do you have more content for me so that I can pay you more? Like, I know you've been struggling and I really want to help you, but I can't do that if you're not sending me content. Like, you know exactly how our payment plan is set up, and if you're not sending me that content, then I can't pay you. There were weeks that I paid her like $25 when we were making like $500 a week. And I knew that she was struggling, so I felt bad and I really wanted to help her. But eventually, she just stopped sending me content, and it was kind of like I needed to learn how to fly on my own. I had already had an individual content where I would upload all the stuff from our 4-girl group, but I never promoted it. And that was another issue that I had with that first girl, is that after a while she had created her own individual Dropbox and she was promoting it on her page. So in the beginning she didn't want to promote our group content, but then we found out that she was promoting her individual content, and I had an individual Dropbox, but that was just because I was the one who did most of the promoting. So sometimes people would say, you know, I can't afford $200. I just want your content, but I never really posted about it. It was just like if somebody asked me for Dropbox details and I sent them our price list and they said, no, I just want you, then I would say, okay, yeah, if you just want my individual Dropbox, it's gonna be $100. So I did have that advantage. I already had some content uploaded to that Dropbox, and I did have a little bit of sales experience by that point in time, which was in June of 2019. We started selling our group Dropbox April 20th, 2019, and then in June of 2019 is when I started doing my individual content. In May of 2019, I tried my hand at being an exotic dancer, but like I said, I lived in Iowa and I didn't make that much money. I worked for 3 nights, and on the 3rd night, I actually lost money between having to pay my fees and tipping out and the amount of money that I made. It was like a Tuesday night in Iowa at the strip club, and I made like -$7. And I hadn't made like a whole lot of money on the other 2 nights that I had danced, and I had already been doing Dropbox at that point. So for me, it was kind of like I had already been doing Dropbox just for a few weeks. Like I said, we started it on April 20th of 2019, and this was probably mid to late May. So probably like a month had gone by when I decided to try my hand at stripping. And in the very beginning, when we had started our Dropbox, I was taking home like $500 a week because we would have thousands of dollars in sales from Dropbox, and I was the one that was making the most of the content on Dropbox, so I got the biggest percentage out of the 4 of us most weeks, which I think is fair since I was running all the books and everything as well and doing all the promoting and talking to everybody. So I never felt guilty for that. But when I was stripping, it made me think I could be making more money sitting at home and just taking pictures of myself to upload to my Dropbox. Obviously, like I said, I had only worked for 3 nights, and I'm sure that if I had worked longer, I would have gotten more experience and I would have gotten more regulars and I would have made more money. But I lived in Iowa. It's not like anyone was coming in and throwing bands 3 times a week because I lived in a relatively rural area in Iowa. So after those 3 nights and the 1 night that I ended up not making any money and actually losing money working at the strip club, I decided just to focus on my Dropbox. You know, the days that I was putting on a full face of makeup to go spend hours at the strip club, I decided to, do the same makeup. I had bought some lingerie to wear while I was working at the strip club, and I wore that to make some of my content, which is how I got a lot of the lingerie that I wore in my old content. Maybe I'll break some of that out again. I had this one that I think would be super cute on my OnlyFans that was like white and it was sequined and it had like the American flag and like eagles on it. So maybe that'll be fun for 4th of July. Give this video a thumbs up if you want to see some of those old outfits that I bought so that I could be a stripper and only ended up working for 3 nights. So I appreciated that experience because I got a lot of new clothes and I learned how to use a pole. And now I have this pole that you can see that I like to use for exercise, and I do make content with it sometimes. And I did learn a couple tricks from some of the girls that I worked with. And because of the nature of the club that I worked at, if I go home to visit friends and family, I can actually still work there. I was just back in town in October and I was wondering about that, and I went and spoke with the manager, who was actually the manager that had hired me. He didn't remember me. He showed me a picture of another girl and told me that he thought that that's who I had been, and I said, no, that's not me. But I did talk to him. I asked him to clarify because when I had first started working there, he told me, there are some girls who will just work on like summer break or they'll come back for winter break and you can come back whenever. But since it had been over a year and I had only worked there for 3 nights, I wasn't sure if that was still applicable to me. But he said, no, that's fine. So I haven't actually done that, but I always pack extra clothes to strip in just in case I have a free night while I'm back home visiting and I want to make a little extra money. I love making money, but I haven't actually done that because when I'm back home, I just like to spend time with my family and friends and relax. because I'm working all the time while I'm in my own home. I've even thought about looking around places in Texas to go dance at because I think that I could make a lot more money in Texas than I did in Iowa, but it's still kind of the same thing. Like, if I'm not even gonna make more money doing that than I am on OnlyFans, and I'm gonna have to drive to get to a club to work at, and I'm gonna have to work my way up the ladder, and I've found that in Texas, a lot more places give you a schedule that you have to work, and that was one of the things that I liked about the club that I worked at in Iowa, is that I was able to show up whenever I wanted. And I've heard from a couple of friends down here in Texas that there are certain clubs that are like that, but not all of them are like that. But that is the kind of club that I would be interested in working at if I were going to do that. But it's still just, it's gonna take twice as much of my time and energy to be a stripper than it does to create content online. So maybe someday I'll look more into that, but I do perfectly fine when it comes to my finances. Obviously, I would love to have the extra source of income, but I just haven't brought myself to do it yet because that's really not aligned with what I really want to do. I'm not very good with talking to people, so I'm not a great hustler. I like to sit and chat with people that are nice to me. I'm not great at being like, hey baby, do you want to dance? That's not really my personality type. I'm a weirdo, even when I worked at Hooters, which I guess you could consider the first stepping stone to this story, but not really. But I always preferred the customers that were nice and cool and funny, and even if they didn't always tip me the best, I'm a very sensitive person, so I don't really like rude people in general. I would rather serve 100 nice people and make the same amount in tips as I would have from like 2 assholes. But that's just my personality. Everybody has their own thing, but I decided to quit stripping because I was making plenty of money from Dropbox. And that's still kind of the mindset that I have today about why I haven't danced down here in Texas, along with the scheduling thing. But then in July of 2019, I was introduced to OnlyFans. I was back down here in Texas visiting my friend Hannah, and her friend was actually one of the 2 girls that I've mentioned in a video before that had an OnlyFans before I started mine. So I used her referral link, and that's how I got into OnlyFans. She encouraged me to look into it, you know, because it was a subscription. It wasn't a one-time payment the way the Dropbox had been, and you can send out pay-per-view messages, and you don't really have to upload as much content as I think that you should when it comes to Dropbox. I've mentioned in previous videos, you know, that I didn't upload as much content to OnlyFans when I first got started. I was kind of juggling OnlyFans and Dropbox at the same time, but OnlyFans wasn't that popular, so I was still making more money just off my Dropbox, and I didn't have to pay anyone 20% of my income. But I believe that now OnlyFans is bigger and there are more people who trust it because it has a better reputation, and we've found out, maybe other people already knew this, but I didn't know when I first got into all of this stuff, that Dropbox is not very secure, which makes sense if you think about it. It's meant for business documents. It was never intended to be selling nudes, even though that's what we used it for. So there were a lot of Dropbox leaks that I was worried about. So what I ended up doing when I canceled all of my Dropbox content, I gave all those people who had bought my Dropbox previously a 1-month free trial to my OnlyFans, just to see if they liked it, if they wanted to get in on the subscription service, because I upload every single day, at least once a day. But I ended up deleting my Dropbox content altogether because I knew that my content was not secure. And that second trip that I took down to Texas in late June, early July of 2019 was the same trip that had me end up quitting my job as a makeup artist. It was a spontaneous trip because one of my friends was suicidal, and I felt as if he didn't really have anyone else that truly deeply cared for him in the way that I did. So it was like 1 o'clock in the morning, and I jumped in my car after calling the cops or an ambulance. I called the non-emergency line because I was in Iowa and he was in Texas, and he called me and told me that he had taken a bunch of pills, and I didn't know what to do. Like, I was in Iowa, there was nothing I could do. So I jumped in my car and I drove down here, and that was the trip that I tried to call my work and tell them, like, I have this emergency, I'm not gonna be coming in, and that's how I ended up kind of getting fired, kind of not really showing up. It's kind of whatever. I did like that job, but I was making plenty of money just off of my Dropbox that I didn't feel as if I needed it anymore. And I felt as if my friend needed me more than my job needed me. And if they wanted to fire me, then I was fine with that as long as my friend was okay. But that was the trip that I ended up making my OnlyFans. I moved to Texas in August of 2019, and I had a couple more experiences with sugar daddies, but overall, I was still making most of my money off of OnlyFans. I really wanted to share this story just to open people's eyes to like the pathway of how you end up doing sex work. It's not always like my parents didn't love me, my father abandoned me, I've got daddy issues, I've got mommy issues. I have issues with my parents, but love them to death. They are actually in town this weekend, so I would love it if you left a comment down below. Let me know if you have any questions for them. I'm thinking about doing a video where I interview them and answer the questions that are submitted by you. If you follow me on Instagram, you might have already submitted a question, but I would love it if you would leave some comments down below with questions that I can ask them this weekend. But for me, I was just a broke college girl, just like so many other college girls, right? And this was a good additional income while I was working as a makeup artist and making some money off of something that I had already been doing for free. So many people label you a slut because you have an OnlyFans, but the reason I started my OnlyFans is because I was in this relationship which was monogamous on my side at least. There are so many girls that are like, oh, you're a slut because you sell your nudes, and you think to yourself, don't you send yours for free? That was kind of my mindset when I first got into selling content, was like, I'm already sending this to him for free and I see other girls making money off of this, like why am I not making any money? I was definitely slutty in high school, but in college I didn't really sleep around. I focused a lot of time on my schoolwork. I spent a lot of time with my friends, and I actually went to a lot of parties. It ended up making me gain weight, and I kind of wonder if that's why I wasn't so slutty, because I wasn't very confident in myself. But that is the same time that I started my OnlyFans, and I was definitely a lot thicker than I am now. I look back at old pictures of my boobs. It makes me so sad. I used to have double D's, and now I wear a C. And I also used to have a bigger butt too. So, you know, it's just one of those things. It's a trade-off. I'm really glad that I lost so much weight. I lost like 30 pounds, but I did lose my tits and my ass. You know, you win some, you lose some. I'm not asking anyone to change their opinions about girls that create adult content, but I do just want to give a different perspective, give my own story, so that you might have a better understanding of why people would choose this lifestyle.